The Arizona Coyotes may have stolen a point, but their losing streak continues. They have a chance to get back in the win column tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. I talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
Your Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. I am Carl Pavlock. It's just going to be me today. Robin is feeling a little bit under the weather, so she's going to take a day off, maybe a couple days. But wanted to talk about last night's game and today's upcoming game, so figured I'd do another solo episode. Before we get started, I do want to thank everyone for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen of the day. And I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. So, uh, let's start by talking about last night's game, and then we'll kind of transition into tonight's game, probably in the second segment, maybe the third. Um, I thought the Coyotes played fairly well in their 2-1 loss to the Winnipeg Jets, and I need to add a lot of stars and caveats to that statement because when I said the Coyotes played well, I meant specifically in recent compared to their recent games. I do not think the Coyotes have played especially well lately. Even when the Coyotes were winning some big games, I don't think they really played all that well. Something that Robin and I had been talking about a couple weeks ago is I thought the Coyotes had another 5-game losing streak in them. They had won games where they scored 8 goals, 9 goals. Like, that's not really sustainable. I don't think anyone thought that it was. So there definitely seemed like there would be a stretch where the Coyotes have a bunch of bad luck, and we have definitely seen that so far. Um, and the Coyotes have lost to some good teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Calgary Flames. They've lost to some bad teams like the San Jose Sharks and the Seattle Kraken in this losing streak. The Winnipeg Jets, I think, are somewhere in the middle. They're not as bad as the Kraken by any means, but I don't think they're as good as the Penguins. I don't think they're as good as the Flames. Um, they're kind of just I don't know. They seem to be more like mid tier. For a while, everyone was talking about the Jets as the team that could bring the Stanley Cup back to Canada, and I don't really see that being the case anymore. I think there are definitely teams ahead of them right now. Probably Toronto, but you could say Calgary. Uh, we'll talk about it today, but I don't think you could say Edmonton for that. But yeah, so I expected the Coyotes to play a little bit better than they would have against a team like the Flames, and they definitely did. They still had moments of inconsistency. They still had like periods where they spent a lot of time off. The second period was just a not very good second period, one that we've seen numerous times. Wasn't a collapse. The Coyotes didn't give up any goals except for a goal that was waved off for a very solid coaching challenge, one that I don't think I've ever seen before. Uh, Head coach Tournier argued that the puck had touched the netting prior to the goal, and further review showed it did. So kudos to whoever spotted that on the bench or on the ice. I do not know. I don't think I saw on Twitter after the game. But yeah, that was a good call to make. And the Coyotes definitely had momentum after that. The problem was they didn't really have the momentum before then. They started the second period well. They kind of eased up for a bit. The issue the Coyotes have is the issue that they've had this entire season. They're inconsistent. They could have good stretches, but they can't put together a full 60-minute effort, and we really saw that. There was definitely moments where If the Coyotes had scored, it could have been a completely different game. This was a matchup where the goaltenders were really like cued into everything. Um, I do not think that if the Coyotes had gotten one, and boy did they get close. Shane Gostisbehere hitting the post is probably one of the closest goals we've seen this season. Like I could have very easily seen this being a very different matchup, but they couldn't. They couldn't get that little bit of extra. They got one goal from the newest Coyote. Oh, the one of the newer Coyotes, Nick Ritchie, um, getting his seventh goal with the Coyotes in 14 games. Uh, what a pickup Ritchie has been, and I'm actually going to talk about him a little bit more next segment. But he had the lone Coyotes goal of the game, and standout performance by Karel Vejmelka. He stood on his head and made sure that the Coyotes stayed in this game, even with like a last minute first period goal. That should have been something that demoralized the team. We have seen that demoralize the Coyotes before, but it didn't. Like they could really trust Vejmelka to keep the pucks out, and boy did he have a lot of work yesterday, but he did good. So that's kind of why I think the Coyotes did good. Like it's really just a measure of how they've played recently. They've been bad. They were okay, average, and uh, I mean at this point in the season, I'm just gonna like look for any kind of positive development because that's what the Coyotes need. This season doesn't matter at all. It's all about just growing as a team, growing as players, and making the next steps and making sure that things are being done the right way. I do think that Coach Bear's system is paying off well. Is that going to last? I don't know. There's no real way to know, and I think eventually most coaches, their strategy just doesn't work. Teams adjust, they lose the room. Lots of things can happen. So I don't want to say that Bear is going to be the Coyotes coach of the, you know, forever future, that he is going to control the team for the next 20 years. He very well could. He's relatively young. He has experience working with young players, and again, he's getting good results in what should be the Coyotes' worst year of their rebuild. So, there's a lot of positives in that. But yeah, it's something that I do just want to talk a little bit more about. Like I said, I want to go into Ritchie a little bit more. But first, I have a couple of quick words from our sponsors, and that's from our friends at Built Bar. And they have a message. Have you tried the Puffs? If not, you are missing out on one of the best tasting Built Bars. The Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. You have the yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all really good. You're going to find one that'll be your favorite. All Built Bars, including the Puffs, are covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein, so if you're a type of person who likes to get a candy bar, replace the candy bar with a Built Bar. They're better for you, and they can still be tasty. That's the most important part. What I want you to do is go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. And we're back. Carl Pavlock, uh, like I said, just doing a little bit of a solo episode, kind of a shorter one, just recapping what happened yesterday, what's going to happen today. If you like what you're listening to, make sure to check out Locked On Now, though. Give this episode a listen, then go check out that one. Um, so, yes, Nick Ritchie has been just a great player with the Coyotes. He's played in 14 games with the Desert Dogs, has 7 goals, 2 assists, a complete flip of his time in Toronto, where he had 2 goals and 7 assists in 33 games. I will say one thing that really stands out looking at stat sheet, he is currently shooting at 28%, which is just absolutely like out of this world high. Um, He mostly seems to be in the 9 to 12 range. Looking at his numbers, uh, got 12 with the Boston. His 2 seasons in Boston. Time in Anaheim, he was usually around 9 to 11. Uh, Career low 3 point. Oh, outside of his rookie year, a low of 3.8 in Toronto. But I do think that Ritchie does provide something that the Coyotes need. And I think Bear has noticed that as well. One of the things that I'm hoping to talk about with Robin later this week, or possibly in the future as we look to recap this season and talk about the next, is Nick Ritchie. Bear slotted him in with Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller against the Jets for part of the game. I think they did play with Boyd for part. There was definitely some line shuffling going on, and I really like that. The Coyotes are never going to get the most out of Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz without a top line center. And let's be real, I do not think that Nick Ritchie is a top line center. Uh, it's just not him. He plays a good role. He does have a bit of an offensive touch. Like there are good things we can talk all day about the positive qualities of Nick Ritchie, but the true number one center is something that's very rare, and it's something that the Coyotes haven't really had in a very long time. When they drafted Barrett Hayton, there was hopes that he would eventually be the number one center, and honestly, it doesn't seem like that's the case. I've loved his game this season. I think he is playing defensively extremely well, but he doesn't really have the offensive flair needed, I think, to be in number one center. He could maybe prove me wrong in a couple of years. I I think everyone was proven wrong by Clayton Keller this season, where he just kind of stepped up. Like you can see those kind of massive jumps as a player gets older and more experienced. So I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but I don't really think that that is in the cards in the near future. You know, go all the way back. Dylan Strome was supposed to be the team's number one center. Martin Hansel was supposed to be the team's number one center. Like the Coyotes have been looking for a number one center, and maybe they can get one in the next coming drafts. But I don't think they're going to get their best out of it. Out of Keller, out of Schmaltz. Heck, when the time comes, I don't Gunther. I think that a center is going to be something that's needed, and Ritchie isn't that, but he does make for an interesting stopgap. I think he provides a little bit more offense than we've gotten from Travis Boyd. I mean, just look at his numbers. Even if he starts to regress a little bit, I think he's going to still be a better offensive option than Boyd. I think he kind of fits well. I haven't really seen that much decline of the Keller Schmaltz pairing. They've definitely not been getting as much offense, but you know, Schmaltz is continuing to put up points. He had an assist on the Ritchie goal. He has a 3 game point streak. Keller had quite a few good looks. Definitely almost tied it with a shot that I don't even think ended up hitting the net, but perfect positioning for it. So yeah, there's definitely good things there, but I think as the season comes to an end, it's time to start thinking a little bit more long term. We don't know what the Coyotes are going to be doing, but I think Ritchie has found a successful spot with the team. Let me pull up his contract details because I do not remember it offhand. He is currently signed for one more year at 2.5 million. Um, and that's yeah. I am glad. I'm glad that the team has players like Ritchie who are signed past this year, because when the season started, there was quite a few questions about who's going to be in the team next year. The Coyotes have 2 defensemen and what, 3 forwards signed past this year, and things are slowly but surely starting to take a little bit more shape. And we're seeing a lot of players who are kind of were acquired this season and are going to be sticking around. Vamelka is definitely a big one. Liam O'Brien, the players that Bill Armstrong got that Andre Tourigny is coaching, they're not just stopgap players. Well, to some extent they are, but they're not just that. They're not just for the season. It's not like the team is going to go out and acquire like a bunch of veterans on expiring 1 year deals like they did this previous season. There will definitely be some, but I think we're going to see a more consistent Coyotes team, which can only be good for the Coyotes. Anyways, we're going to take one more quick break, and then I'm going to talk about tonight's game against the Edmonton Oilers. And we're back. Carl Pavlock with Locked On Coyotes. Uh, Again, just going to be me for today. Wanted to talk about last night's game and then tonight's game, where the Coyotes are going to be facing off against the Oilers. And as much as I didn't think the Coyotes' losing streak was going to end against the Winnipeg Jets, I am not sure that it is going to end against the Edmonton Oilers either. Oilers 1.5 favorites, minus 150 if you bet on the Oilers, plus 130 Coyotes. Coyotes are plus 334, minus 385 for the Oilers. Over under is at 6.5, minus 113 for the over, plus 102 for the under. Apologies if I misread any of that. Robin's more the betting person. I am more the talking about the game person. Um, and here's where I am a bit curious about this. The Coyotes' offense has dried up recently. They haven't gotten past 2 goals in their 5 game losing streak. Um, so that really isn't great, especially for a team like the Oilers, who are really kind of coming around after firing former Coyotes head coach Dave Tippett. They're doing well. I could see them making the playoffs this year. Their positioning in the relatively weak Pacific Division affords them a lot of leeway. So it'll be curious to kind of see what they can do with that. Um, the Oilers have gotten 5 goals on a number of occasions throughout this month. I was looking, and right after the Coyotes lost to the Calgary Flames last Friday, the Flames and Oilers met on Saturday, and the Calgary Flames won 9-5. That's kind of terrifying to me. I don't have faith that the Coyotes can put up 2 goals in a game at this point in the season, much less 6 goals. And it really does seem like the team is going to need something like that. Um, and that's not really a lone occurrence. Just looking at the month of March, so the recent history for the Oilers, they have beaten the San Jose Sharks 5-2. They beat the New Jersey Devils 6-3. If you're looking for kind of comparisons of the Coyotes, those are maybe the teams to look at. Buffalo Sabres, another one, 6-1. The Detroit Red Wings, which I wish we could talk about that Detroit Red Wings Pittsburgh Penguins game. Different podcast, but the Oilers beat the Red Wings 7-5. And those are kind of the major kind of wins. They also beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-1. But just as I was saying, they are really getting these high scoring games. If you look at the roster, it's who you expect. It's Connor McDavid and it's Leon Draisaitl. Both of them have 90 points already. Definitely going to make 100 points, which is just crazy to me because I remember when I first started watching hockey, like it seemed like the days of like consistent 100-point seasons were done. And the Oilers are going to have 2 guys reach 100 points, and they're not that great a team. They stumbled into 2 generational talents, as the Oilers always seem to do, but they're not really able to do much with them. And that's just, it's just crazy. Like the fact that we are not talking about the Edmonton Oilers as a perennial cup challenger when they have 200-point players this season, Knock on wood. I think the NHL would be better if they both do. That's just really crazy. But you know, uh, that kind of shows where I think the offense is for that. The So for this game, I'm gonna pick the over just because I do not see the Coyotes being able to shut the Oilers down that much. I'm going to stick with what I think is the most common numbers for these two teams. I think it's going to be 5-2 or 5-2 Oilers. I think they're going to find a way to just put tons of pucks on net. As I'm recording, I don't know who the goaltenders are going to be. Initially, it seemed like Vamelka was going to get all three starts. He did looked good against the Jets. I thought he made quite a few big saves, but the team may elect to go with Kozhinosh. Either way, it's the second game of a back-to-back. Coyotes are in a losing streak. This doesn't seem good for the Desert Dogs, but you never know. Um, One of the things about hockey is any team could really win any game on any given night, just because they're it's a game of inches, and if they could win the battles, if they can do the little things, I think they could walk away with this one. The way that the Coyotes were able to come back in the third period against the Jets really, I think, is a high point in this season. The Coyotes are a team that, even when they're losing, they don't really stay down. There's been a couple third period collapses, but they will fight to the last minute, and that shows them they'll get rewarded for that. But I just don't see him putting that together for a full 60 minutes against the Edmonton Oilers. I just don't. Anyways, that's going to do it. Like I said, it's a bit of a shorter one. If you want, feel free to check out some of our other episodes. We did a trade deadline special here on the Lockdown Network. Feel free to give that a listen if you want to recap. I know before I wrote the preview for the Edmonton Oilers game, I definitely went and saw who they acquired, depth acquisitions, including former Coyote Derek Brassard. Not really too relevant for this one. But yeah, check that out. Feel free to follow the podcast. We are at LO_Coyotes on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're wherever you can get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Hello to everyone watching. Sorry, it was just me rambling into a camera today. Hopefully, it'll be a little bit better when Robin gets back. Follow me at Carl Pavlak FFH on Twitter, and make sure to interact with us. Send us messages, tweet at us. Yeah, if you have a question, happy to answer. If you have a question during the game, hopefully I can answer that as well. But thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you're staying healthy, and don't forget to howl on.